I know you've got an ear out for the start of the podcast, but before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind you to keep an eye out for Darrell Lee's limited edition Christmas treats, because they're in stores now. Like the iconic Christmas nougat pudding, so yummy and a gorgeous little gift. And some delicious Chrissy-themed twists on your favourite treats, like the Darrell Lee Rockley Road with chewy red and green jelly pieces, green and red crunchy milk chocolate balls, my favourites, and green apple and strawberry flavoured licorice. Watch them disappear. Your Christmas treats table will pop with colour and scrumptiousness. Spread some joy, bring the fun, and enjoy the Christmas tradition that is Darrell Lee. Hurry before they sell out. Darrell Lee makes Christmas better. This is The 5 of My Life with me, Nigel Marsh. The series where I talk to notable people about 5 of their favourite things. The way it works is my guests always choose a favourite film, book, song, place and possession. They tell me their choices in advance so I can research them, but they don't tell me why they've chosen them. That's the subject of our conversation. The reason I devised this series is I wanted to create a slightly different way to gain a genuine insight into the real lives and thoughts of prominent people. Charles Firth, amongst other things, is a father, husband and comedian. I first came across Charles when, along with millions of other Australians, I fell in love with The Chaser, the comedy team Charles created in 1998 with his university mates. Charles is impressively prolific. His many roles include that of author, director, producer, radio host and TV presenter. Charles, how do you fit it all in?
Sequentially. Yeah.
So you are a serial mogonist. You don't do it all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, actually, until about 2007 or 2008, yes, I was a serial, one idea at a time kind of guy, and then I had one of the most tragic creative engagements I've ever had, which actually changed my attitude and probably actually made me a worse creative. I think it's been all downhill since then. So I was doing this project, and my whole idea was you've got to put all your eggs in a basket, in just one basket when you're creative, and just go full tilt at that project and just ignore everything else, and just so that it becomes the best thing in the world. And I did that with this project. It was for SBS TV called The Complete and Utter History of Australia. It was a beautiful 10-part satirical show, sketch comedy, that purported to sort of be the definitive account of Australian, the last 60,000 years of Australian history.
Right.
And went through, we got letters from SBS saying, here's $2.3 million, we're going to fully fund this, along with Screen Australia. And then the GFC happened, and SBS's advertising just dried up overnight, and they suddenly started getting cold feet about all projects, and I was a casualty in that. Suddenly they went, oh, no, we can't do it, and it just died. And this project that I literally spent an entire year working on just disappeared. That was it.
I feel your pain, mate. In 2001, I relocated around the world with 4 kids under the age of 5
oh my God.
to run a set of companies in Australia for an American multinational. Got here and they closed the firm. Which I'm glad you laugh, because I've got a sense of humour. You go, that's brilliant. Okay, I don't know anyone here. I've got no money. I've got no job.
But did they pay for your relocation?
To Australia.
Yeah.
And then
they just abandoned you.
So that's Fat 40 and 5. That's where it came from.
You sure it's not some sort of reality TV show type setup? Like, that's a perfect...
Yeah, so I love the old only joking about the 2.3.
Yeah.
You can take your show, Firth, and you can...
Yeah.
Now, so coming to matters of today,
yes,
without telling us what the choice is, tell me what was the most difficult one for you to choose out of the film, book, song, place and possession?
I reckon possession. Definitely possession.
We're going to come to that last.
Right.
So we're going to start with your film, which is a 1997 Bill Murray film called The Man Who Knew Too Little. My favourite actress, Joanne Whalley,
who was star of Dance with a Stranger and A Kind of Loving,
Yes.
is in that film.
Yes.
And I'd never heard of the film.
Right.
So I love you for getting me into that film, because anything that she's in, I adore. Tell me why you like it and why you chose it.
Right, so I'm interested that it's a 1997 film. I didn't know that. But the reason why I have such fond memories of it, and it is not my favourite film. It's
a meaningful
film. It's a genuinely flawed film.
Well, I think it got 41 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, right.
I thought, who is this Charles Firth?
Yeah.
Like, he's got shit taste.
And who's giving it 41? Like, it's not even that.
21.
I mean, it's high farce. It's a ridiculous premise. So it's a Bill Murray film about a guy who doesn't know anything but is mistaken for being a sort of James Bond-style spy. And the whole movie, the premise is maintained. So everyone interprets all the bumbling things that he's doing as this sort of, he's a genius. He must be, it's so calm and collected in this, high-stakes game of international diplomacy. And, but the reason it's such a fond movie for me is because in 1998, I was living with actually a lot of the guys who now, with the Chaser and a few other people. And in actual fact, that's where I wooed my now wife. Back then it was VHS videos. We'd rent The Man Who Knew Too Little and just watch it. We'd get stoned and watch it over and over again, because I think if you don't have your full mental facilities working, it's a very funny film.
It's a 99 out of on Rotten Tomatoes if you're stoned.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. It's so absurd. And I fell in love with the film, and I used it as a tool, I think, to just make friends. Like, I'd just invite them back to our house and we'd watch it and everyone would laugh. And I remember, like, that's the house, that room is the place where we used to have meetings. For about 6 months before we set up the Chaser, we'd sit in that living room where the TV was and have these meetings that went on for hours, brainstorming all the things that the Chaser could be. It was going to be a newspaper, but all these different things. And lots of people, like all our university friends, like 30, 40 friends would turn up to these meetings, and it was such a joyous, it was such a beautifully, and it was, I knew that it was my last year at university, so it was time.
What did you study, mate?
It was I was just arts, and I did a double major in politics and economics.
Yeah. So, mate, these meetings where people would come around to your sitting room with pizza and beer and dope, and tell me about those.
Well, actually, I think the meetings themselves are actually quite sober, and they'd go on for a while. And I think we were high on the ideas and the possibilities, but then people would stay around, and that's when it'd be like, take out The Man Who Knew Too Little. And I think it became a bit notorious that, right. Oh, Charles is going to play that movie again. Yeah. But Craig also loved it. Like, that and South Park were just the staples of that year.
Have you seen The Death of Stalin?
No, not yet.
Oh, 10 out of 10. I mean, it's unbelievable. But in that, Stalin used to have his meetings, not equating you to Stalin, mate, right? And then he'd make them sit around and watch cowboy movies.
Yeah.
And you couldn't say, look, I don't want to watch The Man Too Little again, Joseph, because he'd shoot you. So they'd have to sit there and watch cowboy movies. Hilarious.
I should have bought a gun.
So that film, the premise is taking something two ways. So Bill Murray thinks he's in a play and it's real world.
Yes.
So it's looking at life and you taking it in two different ways. And your book, by a Canadian philosopher, is a dictionary that is based on a similar premise. It's a bunch of words that we all know and define in a certain way, but old John Ralston Saul has defined them in a different way. My favourite one from the dictionary is a Big Mac, the communion wafer of consumption.
Yes.
So tell me, first of all, about the book, which is actually a dictionary, and then tell me why you've chosen it for Five of My Life.
Yeah, why have I chosen a dictionary?
Yeah, you show off.
Yeah. But, well, it's actually not a dissimilar story to you, Nigel, which is John Ralston Saul was a corporate executive. He was in big oil for years.
Right.
I think he actually ended up becoming the Governor-General of Canada or something.
Wow, okay.
Or maybe his wife became the Governor-General. But he had a sort of sea change where he went, wait a minute, I'm going to become a philosopher. And he did. He during the 1990s, he had a series of really great books, sort of Weberian take on capitalism. So it was a sort of rationalist approach to sort of philosophizing capital, including The Unconscious Civilization, which was his sort of breakout hit. I think the reason why I became a writer was because what I love is when you can actually create more than one meaning out of a single set of words, that when two things are happening and two interpretations are possible from the same text, then that's the delight that excites people's brains, an audience's brain. Like, you can be clear, but things are left unsaid, and the reader has to connect the dots.
So it's like at breakfast when you say, "Could you pass the butter?" And what you actually mean is, "You ruined my life. You're a millstone that's destroying all my dreams."
Yes,
that thing. Yeah, okay.
Just like I was saying to my wife this morning. Yeah. But the other reason why I chose The Doubter's Companion is simply it was the text that I used to woo my wife.
How the hell did you woo your wife, who I would love to meet, with a dictionary?
Well, I was going out with somebody else while I was living in that house.
Bastard.
I know. And my wife was friends with Craig's now wife, Keisha. Like, they were best friends. And she would come around and they'd sit on the balcony overlooking the city. It was a beautiful balcony, and chat about stuff. And I'd come and join them. And Amanda, she was at another university, but she was studying sort of political philosophy, and she has the most extraordinary theoretical, like, she just understands political theory better than anyone else I know. And we'd have these intense debates where we both thought we were right, and we'd get quite angry at each other, and then into that conversation, I discovered this book, and I thought it was hilarious, and she thought it was, and it has a lot of political theory in it, and she'd have an analysis on the thing, and I'd read it out to her late into the night, and she'd pick holes in it, and we'd laugh at it. And eventually, it took about 6 months of this sort of just meeting of minds. It was through conversation. It was so much conversation before we ever did anything. That book was just so central to that seduction.
What a lovely story. And on the subject of romance and women, I loved researching your choices, because I have been chanting in the car, "For we are women, the equal of men." And I mean, the ACTU and all that stuff, absolutely sensational. Right, so tell me about the song, which is "For We Are Women, the Equal of Men," which is the unions, the ACTU, the Australian Council of Trade Unions, 50-year anniversary, we've achieved a lot sort of album.
First of all, the ACTU is probably the daggiest institution in Australia. And the idea that they would put out any album strikes me, first of all, as absurd. They put it out in 1979, and it literally is... That was the peak of their power. Like, literally, you can draw a graph. I did economics at uni. You can draw a graph of trade union decline. It basically starts...
From the album.
The moment the album was published. And I don't know how I came across the album. It was just on the shelf. So it's only an LP, and when I went to university... My parents moved out of home, not me. My mum,
right?
She got a job up in Newcastle like a couple of years before I started going to university, and so she'd commute up there on Mondays, and I would, in late high school, I would just be on my own with my sister during the week, and then she'd come home on weekends. So she still had the house, but it was very part time. But one of the things that she left behind was this huge rack of albums that she'd accumulated both in her relationship with my dad and then later with my stepfather. And at some point I discovered this album and just thought it was the funniest thing ever to exist. Just the concept of a union releasing a full, well-produced album. But then the funniest track on it by far is this feminist anthem called "We Are Women, the Equal of Men," written by, I don't know whether you saw it on the credits, it's written by Bob Young,
right,
and Arthur Sherman or something. And it's written by two men.
Who are they?
Well, I don't know. They're men.
Are they union officials? Or are they?
Yeah, they would have been union officials who wrote this sort of "For We Are Women, the Equal." But it's also, the lyrics themselves are just ridiculous. So, because it will match boy in situ, skydiving. They're just so, it's doggerel. Anyway, but I think part of it was I think my politics came from my parents. Like, you know, we went to peace rallies every Sunday and, you know, every Palm Sunday. You know, my dad was heavily involved in the sort of NFIP, which is the Nuclear Free and Independent Pacific movement, all the peace movements of the 1980s. And that's where all those albums came from. Like, there's just tons of left-wing. That's what I grew up listening to. It was just a very special... It just reminds me of my parents.
So I'm thrilled that through you agreeing to come on, with which thank you, that I've got to know it. And I did a bit of research on it. And so you and your family, rabid lefties. Which is fabulous, because my background is the reverse. I mean, not...
Well, you're military, aren't you?
That's right. So around my dinner table, unions are the devil. And I remember to this day seeing a ACTU car sticker, which made me laugh out loud, but also had a profound effect, because I've got my own views. I'm not saying I've got my family views at all. I've got my own views on everything. But so I'm driving around, and this is probably, 2001, and it was ACTU, from the people who brought you the weekend. Now, isn't that a sensation? You go, it's funny, but also it's thought-provoking.
Yes.
You go, I've never heard, that's just a car sticker, a better justification for why you need unions.
Yes.
So specifically, they may be idiots, you know, around Wapping or whatever and blah, 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 blah. But no, if we pull it back a bit, lads, you go, brought you the weekend. We used to have 8-year-olds down mines because they were smaller and they could fit through smaller holes.
Yes.
And you go, okay, I like bringing it back to the overarching concept. You go, untrammeled commercialism, you know, you be careful with that.
Yeah.
But your fourth choice, so I spent a lot of time researching you, right? Hilarious, is your place, which is 89 Botany Road, and I have investigated that.
Oh, did you go and see it?
I found a laundry, a church, a bike shop. I suspect it might be a knocking shop. So I can't for the life of me understand why you've chosen 89 Botany Road. This is The Five of My Life. More with Charles Firth after the break. We're talking with Charles Firth, who's about to tell us why he's chosen an obscure Redfern address on Five of My Life as his place.
Yeah, but this is a sad story. This is not a nice memory for me in so many ways, which is one of those... You're right, there is a church there and there's a laundromat. It's right next to the laundromat is this building, which is currently called the Brilliant Building. It's about to be knocked down to make way for the Metro. But so after I left the Chaser in about 2007 or 2008, I started working with a guy called Nick Richardson. We made a few documentaries together, like comedy documentaries, and did a whole lot of advertising stuff and comedy. But by about 2011, 2012, we were getting itchy feet. And one of the things that I'd always wanted to do was do a daily satirical news show, like do the Daily Show of Australia. So we just started doing it. We just decided actually...
From 89 Botany Road? Or?
No. This was from in the city. We had an office in the city. And through a lot of just sort of, you know, patching things together without any money, we managed to convince like the Sydney Morning Herald and the ABC and the Comedy Channel each to put in a tiny amount of money.
Right.
That allowed us to do, I think we did like, I don't know, 200 or 300 episodes that were like, I know.
Wow. Okay.
That were like 2 minutes long or something like that. And so they took a year. That was 2012, right? And so we had this show, which was so weird because it was like, it didn't really exist. But during that period, we then found a whole lot of writers and performers who went, what's this crazy sort of YouTube show that's also just on the ABC and, you know, Comedy Channel? And then eventually we managed to convince the ABC, no, let's make it, you know, properly fund it. We'll do it every day and it'll be 10 minutes a day and we'll basically be the news channel and the news show for ABC2.
Be careful what you wish for. Right, what happened?
Yeah, and then so what we did is we built a studio offside at 89 Botany Road.
Okay.
We got all the silencing. It was just amazing. It was the dream come true. And we had an upstairs which also had an advertising agency to sort of pay the bills.
Sure.
And then downstairs was this crazy broadcast studio and because the internet is so bad in Australia, part of the thing was that it was close enough to the ABC that we'd put it on a thumbnail. It was due in at the ABC at 7 o'clock for a 7:30 broadcast, and we'd turn it around in a day. We'd put it on a thumbnail drive, and then somebody would get on a bicycle, and it was terrible when it was raining because it was like, well, you still got to go, and ride their bike to Ultimo where it would be ingested. It was so bizarre.
But so this is a great story, and I almost don't want you to end it because you said it was sad. So far it's great.
So then fast forward 18 months into that project, it was all going well, and then I discovered that one of my business partners was just a crook who was taking money, and he stole an enormous amount of money from that set of companies.
So damn, and you were friendly with this bloke. You trusted him.
I'd been working with him for 7 years. It was just.
And he was trousering it, or he was doing something else with it. What was he?
He was investing it. It's apparently incredibly common, which is you get these people who present themselves as business managers. I was creative; he'd be business, and he was just siphoning the money to invest in other crazy schemes that didn't go anywhere, and along the way leaving the high life. Like he was just skimming, and it actually made it was also a sort of relief in a way because it meant that the past 7 years of my working life made a whole lot more sense when it was like I've always wondered why I work at 100 miles an hour and I never seem to sort of accumulate huge clumps of money like everyone else seems to do that when when you're running a TV show and have your own studio and running an ad agency, you'd expect to sort of.
How did you find out, and what did he say when he said, "Oh, mate"?
So it was actually another business partner of his worked it out, who had a far better business brain, and started forensically going through the spreadsheets. And he called me. The weekend it went down, he called me on the Friday and went, Charles, I've been looking through the accounts. You have to come over and you have to start looking through your accounts and I'll show you the methods that he's using. And by the Sunday, I got over there on the Sunday he thought he'd found like 50 grand missing. And then by the time I'd gotten over there, for him it was like 300 grand missing. And
so you confronted him in person? You say
I could. Let's
call him Dave. You said, Dave, it's come to my attention you're ripping me blind, and he goes, "Yep, sorry about that, Charles," or "No, I'm not," or he runs away, or
it was denial.
Okay.
It was denial at first, and then he got caught in his own lies, of course, and I think completely mistakenly and stupidly. Took a very legalistic thing. Like my doctor, I immediately went to a doctor and went, I'm going to need some sleeping pills. And he just happened to go, oh my God, this exact same thing happened to me once.
Right.
You've got to cut him out of your life. So I just immediately went extremely legalistic, which I think was a mistake because, the person who benefited most from this fraud was my lawyer. And I litigated,
did you win?
We won. Yeah. We won a couple of the judgments, and then they kept on being reversed and everything like that. And I ended up settling, but I ended up settling in a way that where everyone felt they'd lost, basically, which is always how settlements happen. But enough to sort of get away and get on with my life. But it was one of those things where he wanted me to not be allowed to talk about it ever again, and I went, nah. That's not going to be in.
What a sort of a life lesson and experience to go through. I hearing you say what your doctor said reminds me of a story that's different context, but I think relevant. Where Sean Connery, so James Bond, blah blah blah, loaded. He doesn't need any money. He found out that one of his business managers had taken from one of his properties a fridge. Now, Sean Connery doesn't need a fridge. Sean Connery can buy another fridge, right? But he did what your doctor said. You go, hold on, there's a trust thing going on here.
Yes.
If you'd said to me, I need a fridge, I'd say, well, I've got 100 in all my properties. Why don't you just take one you like? Or I'd buy you one. But you stole it. You didn't tell me. And you're supposed to be my friend and my colleague. It's such a brutal bucket of reality, cold water thrown in your face when you realise, hold on, you've been shagging me.
That's right. And what I now look back on is there was a culture of unaccountability in all the companies that we'd built together. You know, it was a set of companies. And that was clearly on his part by design, but I had allowed it. I did allow a culture of unaccountability to build up because it was so much easier. You know,
yeah, because you're creative, mate.
Yeah, I'll be creative. Oh, yeah. You're doing. You sure that's all right? Okay.
But happily, because I know your fifth choice, it didn't completely ruin you because your favourite possession is a house.
Yay!
So tell me about why you've... Other people on this show, mate, choose a twig or a T-shirt, but you're going big. You pull out the big guns and go, my house. So tell me about the house.
Well, this was a very hard question to do because I'm not somebody who cherishes possessions. Like I don't have a keepsake. I don't have jewelry or anything. But the house. The reason I chose the house is because it has changed me.
Right.
Like I've lived in lots of houses over the years, but this is the first house where I just go, I really want this house. And we are so overextended on the mortgage. It is unbelievable. Like every time you read the news about. So some mortgage borrowers might be overextended in the coming months. It's like, that's me. And that's been like us as a couple for years. Like we're just going, what have we done? Like this is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the goal is to keep this house. It's got to pull out the back.
Right.
Our kids. It's a sort of apartment complex like of townhouses. Our kids are friends with everyone else in the complex. Like it's this beautiful family environment where there's a real sense of community. I used to dream of going back to New York for a couple of years or, it's actually changed my priorities. This house is something that I serve, like it possesses me as much as I possess it.
So, but this, the English comedian, the fat bloke Mel Smith?
Yes, great.
He lovely. He gave an interview, quite an emotional one, where he said, I only grew up when my father died. And you go, that's so interesting. Where you're living your life, you're doing stuff. And then you go, hold on, well, I'm the next cab off the rank. Dad is dead. So something fundamentally has shifted in my life. And when I'm hearing you talk, it's interesting where you go, and it's not a materialistic thing. I think it's a sort of a maturing, growing up thing. You go, I found things that are valuable and important to me, and it's worth working hard for, but this is serious. So when you're eating pizza, smoking dope, watching The Man Who Knew Too Little, you haven't really got an anchor that you are responsible for. And
yes.
you've got 2 kids, haven't you?
Yes.
So you go, it's a part of growing up, isn't it? You go, this is real. I've got a house,
Yeah, and in some ways it feels like it has forced me to grow up.
Yeah.
Like it's made me reflect on my work. Like there's always been the opportunity to go, we'll sell out of Sydney and have a sea change, and we'd easily be able to survive if we lived up the coast or something like that. And you're going, no, but actually this house is so wonderful that the quality, like we pinch ourselves. We've been living there for 4 years. We still pinch ourselves every summer going, how possibly do we live in such a perfect place?
So that is such a lovely note to end on. But before I do, I want to say a couple of things. One is, it's been just an honour to have you on, mate. I really appreciate that. But I'm going to ask you one other question that you don't know I'm going to ask you, which is, who should I have on next?
That's really interesting. I mean, there's a couple of people who I would seriously think about getting.
Mm-hmm.
Seth Abramson. Right. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I don't.
I don't even know what to think about him, but he's this very intense citizen journalist who lives in, I don't know, Connecticut or something like that, who has literally been piecing together, he's an ex-lawyer, piecing together the Trump-Russia stuff.
Okay.
And I just get the sense that he has the most fascinating story behind him about where he's now ended up.
So we're going to give him a call. Who was the other person?
Except it's a bit boring to
No, nothing's boring here. We're all friends here.
But actually, all the way through this interview, I was thinking to myself, you really should get my sister on.
Your sister? Okay. Why should I interview your sister?
Well, she loves talking about herself. And she's a great raconteur, but she has a totally different journey to me, even though we're sort of from the same background.
I think we're going to do it, and I think we're going to rename the series The Five of the Firth Family.
Yes!
Yeah, Charles Firth, thank you very much. The Five of My Life was presented by me, Nigel Marsh. Producer, Alex Mitchell. Sound production and theme music by Darcy Thompson and Matt Nicholish.